Hey everyone, this is Olivia Caudill with Conscious Wealth Builders Online Summit, Creating Prosperity with Your Higher Purpose. I am so excited to have these two powerhouse people on our summit today here with you. This is Justin and Jackie. Welcome, guys.
Hey, happy to
Hey,
be
thanks so much
here.
for having us.
Yes, it's so awesome. So Justin and I were just reminiscing on how we met at Digital Marketer event about 3 years ago. And we friended on Facebook. And I literally was putting out to the universe, like, okay, universe, who is supposed to be on this summit delivering messages to make the world a better place? And you just were like, Justin, yes. And you both have a really cool company, several companies, conscious companies, but one particularly is Flow Consciousness Institute. Yeah?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we recently launched that to kind of be a container for all the research we're doing and the programs that we're running. So it feels really good because what we're trying to and we are bringing science and research to transformation in a lot of ways. So
So cool.
that's not something that always gets done, and we think it's super important.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Well, I just got done interviewing Brandy Vale. She's a part of this summit, and she really hones in on the science. You know, how to really get your brain to work for you on a spiritual level. And it was just a really cool interview. And then Roland McCready from Heart Math, you know, they've got some really amazing research around, you know, the heart energetic field of consciousness and when we use our emotions like gratitude. So I so
I
get what
just had mine done actually.
did
I was at
you?
the Science and Non-Duality conference and I had my coherence tested for the first time. And I think it proves that flow is good for the body because I got 100% coherence on my first time around.
You rock. And listen, I've hooked that up to a lot of people, and that's, yeah, very uncommon in the world. It's usually like red and very jaggedy lines when you're looking at people's heart rhythms on a live screen. So it's just, we live in a world where there's a lot of chaos, a lot of stress, you know, and I had to retrain my nervous system because I used to experience panic attacks a lot and anxiety. And that really does keep you out of the flow consciousness, which is what you guys are going to speak to us about today. So I'll let you take over and just share with us about, you know, what you guys are up to inside of that.
Yeah. So this past year we launched the our Flow Mastery program, which is kind of like our flagship Flow consciousness training program. And what it is it's an 8-week deep dive that really takes people from wherever they're at and shifts them into flow consciousness. It's a whole system of like internal rewiring, reprogramming, and external alignment with the flow. And so it's a really powerful way for people, and particularly entrepreneurs and people that are leaders and visionaries, to kind of shift their reality into a way of living that's effortless, and that it kind of breaks all the traditional rules of society.
Yeah, we're creating a new paradigm of effortlessness and just tearing down this old way of doing things that is, the hustle and the struggle, the grind, and which ultimately leads to burnout, which I know too intimately about myself because
Yeah.
I in the past I worked myself to the bone
Mm.
and was working 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, and just to the point where I got a chronic autoimmune condition. I lived in constant low-grade anxiety, was on a cocktail of medications to manage my autoimmune condition, and I achieved a great level of success, but it's not ultimately how I wanted to live. And so
Mm.
now I've shifted into this other way of being, this flow consciousness, which is now scientifically proven by my heart math to show that is a much better way to be for your body and your mind.
Wow. Oh my gosh. You know, I love what you just said because there's so many people in the world that are experiencing that level of burnout. And a lot of entrepreneurs, because we're so like committed to an end result, getting somewhere. Like success means whatever you make success mean. And I've fell into this trap, and sometimes I still do, you know, and I'm still, you know, and this is why I have this online summit so I can learn from amazing people like you and really just master this, right? And I like how you say mastery in your course. That's really great. But there's, yeah, I mean, so many people that are burnt out trying to get somewhere to some kind of accomplishment. And really, what you guys are doing and what it sounds like is you're helping people align with their highest purpose. Because I really truly feel that when we're aligned with our highest purpose, things do become effortless and just kind of flow. Yeah. Would you guys agree with
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah, that's one part of it for sure. It's really a whole. That's definitely a big part of it. I would say that a lot of what we teach is how to do that, but a lot of it is also really restructuring our own consciousness, our belief structures, our emotional realities, our
Mm,
getting rid of traumas and all these different things. And we basically what we've done is like we've mapped out like the actual belief structures that you need to have in order to be in flow consciousness. We've mapped out like the emotional terrain that you need to align with to get there. And so it's really both those things. It's aligning with purpose. It's really learning how to use intuition at a high level. It's clearing out anything that's blocking you on an internal level and developing a way of looking at the world where you're constantly in an infinite possibility state. So you're not
wow.
limiting yourself with your own consciousness. And the cool thing about that is that it's way more effortless, and it also produces faster growth and struggle and hustle and all that stuff. So it's not like, okay, well, you're sacrificing growth and success and speed for effortlessness. It's both. It's yes, and you get to have exponential growth and effortlessness,
This
which
is
is cool.
exactly what the summit is all about. So I love that the universe was like, Justin, and I'm like, why? And I knew that it was going to be like totally in alignment. And so what you're saying is exactly what this is all about. It's like you can have both and it's not an either or situation. And I think a lot of times people get a little hesitant when they start talking about consciousness and yoga and like all these things because they're like, well, that's woo woo. It's like wooey. It's not real. It's like those people aren't focused. They're broke. And I'm like, interesting. So how can we really bring the two? Because the yoga and the synergy of the heart and the mind is so important of being an evolved human being. And then also the being in this material world, paying your bills and all these things are very, it's like, so bringing those two together, which is what you're basically, saying is cool.
Yeah, yeah, totally. They're not exclusive. It's like, and I personally, I think we both share the same sentiment. Is like, man, everything's like woo woo now. Like all the good stuff has been labeled woo woo. So like, how do we like extract like the really good stuff and like
Yes.
not let it be overshadowed by those stereotypes?
Exactly. That's what Conscious Wealth Builders is about. And it's really about conscious wealth being a state of consciousness and wealth being more than just money and possessions. It's really about your spiritual wealth, right? It's really about your consciousness and really creating a wealthy consciousness. That's the meaning of wealth and how we're using it in this particular summit.
Absolutely. And for me, it was redefining success. In the past, I thought success was, equivalent to how much money I made and the car that I was driving and these outward manifestations of success. But now I've redefined it as happiness and really just redefined the purpose of goals and came to this understanding that my self-worth is not related to my net worth.
Mm.
The purpose of goals is not necessarily to achieve them, and there is no such thing as failure. So when you're just using these things to motivate you and guide you towards creating something, and there is no attachment to achieving your goals, that creates so much freedom. And
Mm.
the only limitations that we have are the ones that we create for ourselves. And really, it's people's fear of failure, fear of success, fear of being seen, speaking publicly. There's all of these limitations that they create for themselves. And what we do is we work through these at every level. So at the mental level, at the emotional level, the cellular level, the energetic level, to clear those out. Because what you can create when you don't have fear is infinite.
That's so cool. Can you guys take us through just like a little, not like obviously the whole thing because we don't have enough time, and I like to save, those things for when people do your courses, but could you just give us a little taste of how you guys go through a process of that?
Of like clearing a fear, for example.
Well, yeah, like clearing fear. Well, clearing fear, absolutely, because you spoke about intuition, and even myself, I would get like, is this intuition or is this fear? because intuition can kind of come in like a warning, like, hey, whoa, whoa, don't do that. But it could feel like fear. And then you're like, okay, is this fear or is this intuition? And sometimes it
Yeah.
takes a certain amount of discernment.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, actually, and that's something that we talk to specifically in the course because it's like, and this is why we start the course off with emotional clearing, because if you have a lot of fear, it can cloud your intuition because intuition can be very subtle and it is a feeling, it's usually a felt sense for most people. And so you need to be able to discern what is fear or what is intuition. And if you have like all kinds of fears that are, lurking in your subconscious and are kind of, anchored into your nervous system, it's just going to make it challenging. So we start by clearing that out so you have this like neutral space where you can actually get a clear read on your intuition. And, to give an example of something that we do in the program that around intuition, for example, it's again, it's a felt sense, right? So by tuning into these subtle feelings that we're getting in our nervous system, in our bodies, we can actually read what our intuition is telling us in a given situation. So for example, if you're making a decision between something, like a simple thing that we teach is to be able to tune in and like kind of sit with the decision that you're making. So like if you have two decisions between, A and B, right? You take decision A and you kind of sit with it for a minute and you maybe even like visualize yourself taking choice A, and then you notice how you feel in your body, right? Are you feeling heavy and contractive? Are you feeling expansive and light? Like what feedback is your body giving you in relation to that decision and taking the action of that decision? And you do the same thing for choice B, and anything that's feeling heavy and constrictive is obviously something that your intuition, your felt sense is telling you is actually probably not the ideal choice. And something that's expansive and light and freeing and makes you excited and joyful, like that's something that your intuition is telling you is good for you. So it's a really cool way to kind of bypass the mind and shift into the higher realm, the quantum level, which is where our intuition is really, acting.
Wow, that's really great. You know what? I've got a question for you about that. And I'm going to kind of challenge that a little bit because there's been times where, like for instance, I've got this a speaker's boot camp that's coming up at the end of November. And one aspect, I was really excited about it, but the more that I think about it, it's like I have this heavy feeling and there's a lot of fear there. So there's like, I don't want to. And so at one point it doesn't feel so exciting anymore. It feels more like fear and heavy and constricted. And I've had this happen in the past and I chose to do it anyways. And it ended up being a really phenomenal experience. So that's where I kind of go to. It's like, it's a tricky thing to kind of discern a little bit, whether if it's just fear and maybe some resistance because of the uncomfortability of like having to grow as a speaker, for instance. It's a really uncomfortable place for me to be, but at the same time, that is what I want. So, can you speak to that?
Yeah, we teach that is exactly what you should do, is the thing that feels like it's in your highest excitement, but also terrifies you. So that's
Okay.
really the edge. That's really pushing the limits of your comfort zone and expanding the limits of what's possible for you.
Yeah, because like if you think about what's happening is, right, your first hit, like you just talked to the heart math guys, right? They're all about precognition. Your heart is sensing like 8 to 9 seconds into the future. Okay, so your first reaction is, oh, that's exciting, right? That's your intuition. That's the highest level of your consciousness, of your awareness. And then you pull it down into the mind, into like the domain of like all our fears and insecurities. And then that starts to bubble up. And then we start to doubt our intuition. And then we go, oh, I don't know if I should do this. That's like the biggest problem that people have is that, and one of the things we teach is like, you stay in intuition and don't fall back down into like fear and all that stuff. But I mean, I think your example is really telling, is that it scared the crap out of you. It wasn't your highest excitement, and you did it, and it was a wild success.
Yeah.
And that's like how it works. Is like there's all these clues in our reality that are telling us like what to do next, and if we can learn to see those, then we have like this roadmap that takes us through life effortlessly. You know?
That's so cool, and I love how you said clues. Can you speak more to that? Because like. Yeah, there's definitely clues, and you have to pay attention, right? It's like you kind of got to be open to that. But can you give us some like examples of what that means? I'm
Yeah.
looking for clues.
So we say there's three hallmarks to flow, and one of them is synchronicity. And so these are like the little winks and nods from the universe that you're on the right track, and these little moments that are these meaningful coincidences. And when you follow those breadcrumbs, they ultimately lead to something bigger that, hindsight looking back, you can trace everything back and be like, wow, all of these things led up to that.
Yeah.
So we calibrate flow by the number of synchronicities that you have, and they're still awe-inspiring. They happen to us all the time, but we still have to text each other and be like, can you believe this happened?
Yeah.
And it's still just, I am in so much gratitude for it. But the more in flow you are, the more frequently you'll have these experiences of synchronicity.
Yeah. So synchronicity is a great one. When things are effortless, that's another sign. When things are fortuitous or things are conspiring in your favor, when life feels like it's conspiring in your favor, and basically when the resources you need kind of just show up, like I pop up on Facebook and I say yes, like things like that, right? Yeah.
So, for example, this is a fun one that I shared with our group. I was at this science and non-duality conference over the weekend, and because I can't stand conference coffee, I went, I Googled where there was like a good coffee roaster in San Jose, and I end up chatting with the barista who happens to be job hunting, and he's an engineer in aerospace specifically. But because I made all of these little micro him, about his life, I found out this information about him. And then I went to the conference, and then I went into this super geeky quasi-crystalline structure of the universe talk, and went to speak to the presenter after. And the guy next to me pulls out his business card, and it says NASA. And so I was like, oh, look at that. What a coincidence, right? Wow. And then I saw him again in oddly enough, another talk, increasing the statistical probability of synchronicity. I saw this guy in the front of the class, and I was like, hey, how'd you like to test this out? And I saw your card earlier, and you work for NASA, and it just so happens that my barista this morning is looking for a job in aerospace. And would you be open to speaking to him? And he's like, well, I'm working on some Mars project. I'm not in engineering, but I'd be happy to help. Can, give him my number. And so these little things that, what are the odds that my barista is going to be an aerospace engineer, and then I'm going to be with this guy from NASA. And now I went back and potentially changed the direction of this guy's life forever.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah.
There's synchronicities, like, they start to happen all the time for you, and to get more of that, I mean, to really get back to your original question, is like, there's other signs we get too internally. Like, those are kind of external reflections, like everything we just talked about. Like, those are like calibration tools, so you can see that you're in flow, right? Like, that's feedback from your life, right? We're creating our realities, and so your life is reflecting back to you your own state of consciousness. So there's that. But then there's also signals that you get internally that let you know. So like intuition is one, right? Like this felt sense we were just talking about. That's a breadcrumb. So okay, I'm getting this feeling of expansiveness or excitement or inspiration. Like, that's a sign that whatever you're feeling that about is something that you should do to bring you more in flow. And so it's like an internal and external dance. Like, you're looking for signs in your life to let you know that you've calibrated, and you're also following certain signals that you're getting internally to let you know that, like, this thing that you should do. So like Jackie's excited to help this guy out, right? Then that's a sign that, like, in executing that inspiration and like following those breadcrumbs, something's going to happen that's going to bring them both into more flow.
Yeah, and the contribution to you that gives to you, allowing you to, like, wow, like, build your belief system around the universe, and and it's a sign for you that you are in the flow because you're kind of a participant.
Yeah, and there's no direct benefit to me in helping this guy other than I get tremendous joy. And one of my ways of being in flow is being in service, which is one of our flow principles. So we teach that flow is maybe 60% deep inner work, where you're diving in and clearing out all of your limiting beliefs and fears and emotional patterning. And then the rest of it is following these 7 principles that we've created. And one of them is The fifth flow principle is the law of circulation, where you're showing up from a place of service, but then being open to receiving. And so constantly going up to people and saying, how can I serve you? How can I support you? What do you need? And then just giving freely of whatever it is that you want more of in your life. So if you want love, you give love. If you want more money and abundance, you give money. And so you're just constantly showing up from this place of service and giving freely, but then being open to receiving as well. So it's like everything in nature is cyclical. And so if you're just giving energy out one way, and either in the form of giving, but then not receiving, it kinks the flow. So it has to be both. And typically people are really good at giving, but maybe not so open to receiving. And so the practice that we teach is really just showing up in service, but then really allowing for support and, you know, accepting compliments. If someone wants to carry your bags or open the door for you or support you with your business, just receiving that as well.
That's so awesome. So you talk about these 7 principles. So can we kind of go one by one through those?
Well,
or is that the secret sauce?
It's just secret sauce, but like it's almost like irresponsible
I
on a certain
gotcha.
level just to say it and not like fully explain it, because like you don't get the complete picture. But I mean, like we could pick like maybe like 1 or 2 and play with that a bit.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
it's not like they're mutually exclusive. So like,
Sure.
you know, you want like diving into one is like, if you get really good at practicing one, like, you know, that can get you pretty high into flow. So you don't have to be.
Yeah. And for example, the principle that I just shared with you has been so powerful for me in building my network and having this incredible network of people to support me, you know, because I've always shown up like this in my life. And so even in previous careers, or even, you know, back as far as I can remember, this is how I was showing up in the world. And so now I have one of the most desired networks on the planet, and everyone's like, wait, how are you with these incredible people? Like, it just doesn't make sense. But it's because I was always showing up from a place of how can I support you? And so just shifting into that principle alone will expand your network and open doors in ways that you could have never imagined. So I think that just following that principle and just give more than you're trying to get is a really powerful business practice.
That's so great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's super powerful asking people, how can I support you? And tapping into that power of the network is amazing. Another one that we kind of touched on that's really deep is, you know, following your intuition. That's one of the principles, is to follow your intuition at all times. And it seems like kind of like a no-brainer, but there's a lot of subtlety to it that makes people take for granted, and they don't always see, that makes them like realize like just how powerful it is. And one of the things that we like to talk about, and I think that's really a really important distinction to make, is that reality is nonlinear and our intuition is nonlinear. So what that means is that like most people are operating through life where like they're trying to look at things in a very logical, rational way. And so if they can't see how things would unfold or make sense, they just discount it as a possibility, or they write it off, or they can't trust it. But like Jackie was saying, you know, like she's talking to this barista at Starbucks or wherever she was, and now she's making these connections with this guy from NASA, and like that's more of an example of something that's nonlinear, where basically you can't tell like exactly how something's going to work out, but you have to trust that it's in flow for you. And we have some great examples of this. Like, there's some great stories that we have. So like one of them is and this applies to like how you might use this to grow your business, right? So we got invited. A friend of ours was staying with us. A friend of Jackie's really was staying with us a few months ago, and she's like, "Oh, I think you guys should go. I really recommend that you guys go to this event in Malibu." And it's at this place called the Creative Visions Foundation, and they have, you know, they're an activist, a creative network and profit. So we're not really that, we don't really do that, but it's kind of like, it sounded cool and we trusted her, and she's like, yeah, you should go. And so we kind of felt into it, and we're like, yeah, that sounds really fun. And it's a bit of a drive from Santa Barbara to get to Malibu. It's, you know, a good hour and a half, 2 hours with traffic. And you're leaving peaceful, the little hamlet of Santa Barbara and traveling into the big bad world when you go down to LA. So it's not like something everyone's just like ripping and raring to get down there. It's like, okay, yeah, all right, let's go. And so, so we drove down. It took us like an hour and a half to get there. And we walk in, and they're starting. We got there a little bit late, and they were starting this. They were starting this talk, and they were kind of hustling everybody that was there. Like, hey, everybody has to go to this talk. No side conversations. We all have to be present for this talk. And we synchronistically we ran into some friends while we were there. So that was already a synchronicity, letting us know that we were kind of hot on the trail of flow here. And so Jackie went over into the corner and like stood with the people that she knew. And I was about to walk over there and stand with her for this talk, but something in me said like, no, don't do that. Like my intuition was just like, don't do that. And like go over here and just stand next to all these random people that you don't really know. So I listened to that, and I walked like 15 feet over in the other direction. I just stood there while this talk was starting. The talk went on for like 15, 20 minutes. It was pretty good. And then when it ended, they're like, okay, we encourage you to connect with people. And so everybody kind of scattered like ants at a picnic. And like this woman turned around. She was like maybe 10 feet over to my left. She turned around and just like, I turned around. We just like locked eyes. And we both just like kind of like were drawn towards each other. And we started talking. And the first thing she asked me was like, "Whoa, hey, I'm a Tasso. What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm teaching flow. I travel around the world. I teach flow consciousness, and we run training programs and all these things." And her jaw just like hits the floor, and she goes, "I'm making a documentary film on the exact kind of flow that you're talking about and that you teach." And
called The Flow Movie.
Called The Flow Movie.
I love it.
Yeah. And so
that's great.
And I mean, it actually got even crazier. I won't go into the whole story, but it got even crazier, and there was way more synchronicities after that. And now they're talking about having us be the place where they direct people after the film to go to get training on actually how to live in flow, right? So potentially a huge business opportunity, right? But if you tried to think of that from your logical mind, like if you tried to plan that out or say, well, I'm going to go to this event and I'll probably meet someone there who has a documentary, like you could never.
Yeah, you'd be like, no way. Yeah.
There's no way, but that's how intuition works. And that's how flow works, is that you have to trust these intuitional signals that you're getting. And when you can do that at a high level and you can leap like that, that's when you start to experience quantum leaps in your growth and your success and your business growth. But it's it's nonlinear, and you can't always figure it out with the rational mind. So that's where people get caught up,
I love that. That's so great. Is just being able to surrender, like the chatter. That's what you were talking about earlier. Like all that chatter, like what comes up. I'll have like this intuitive excitement, and then the chatter of all the reasons and excuses why that's a really bad idea will set in. And so like I always have to remind myself. I had a coach who would say, "Stick to the plan, Olivia." He was from the UK. And stick to the plan. And what he meant was stick to the intuitive plan, because our minds want to take us out, right? It's like.
Yeah, or the opposite of I had an experience where, well, two parts of it. One is speaking things into existence. This is a practice that we teach as well. And so one of the things that I've been talking about for the past several years, my background is working with autism. And so I'm working to revolutionize the therapy delivery model for special needs. And I've been saying this, and it's been no more than a concept for most of the time. And just by sharing that with people, everyone says, oh, well, you need to connect with the founder of Autism Speaks, and you need to meet this person, you need to meet that person. And just by virtue of speaking it into existence, I'm enrolling other people into it. And so as this happened, I was offered $10 million to build this dream, my dream clinic, essentially. And I made a decision based on my intuition, exactly like Justin was talking about this practice, rather than thinking about it. Because if I made the decision from the level of the mind, it sounded great, right? It's here's everything you thought you wanted. Here's like funding for your vision. Here's, the possibility, everything you thought you wanted is right here. But when I felt into it, I wasn't excited. It felt really heavy and contracting, and like no part of me was interested in going forward, because I was more drawn to coaching and doing flow and traveling the world and being free. And that was my excitement. I was going to Chile to coach on a tech incubator. And that was really where my energy was feeling drawn. So I was able to turn down funding for my, one of my biggest visions, because it wasn't completely aligned based on making the decision from my intuition. Because if I made the decision from the mind, it sounded perfect. And then when I said no to that, 2 days later, I met a guy at Summit Series who said it's our destiny to work together. And turns out he's the VC who bought Powder Mountain and builds charter schools in Africa with Mark Zuckerberg. And he connected me to a neuroscientist who's doing this amazing work harmonizing the brain waves. And that felt exciting to me. But because I was able to trust, like you said, and surrender the mind and make the decision based on my felt sense, I said no to a 9 to make room for a 10.
That's so great. And this is so juicy because, I've met just a few people who have shared back about this summit, and they're like, wow, thank you so much for creating this, because I'm still struggling trying to find my life's purpose. And so could you guys speak on your view of our high purpose, like what we've been sent here to do and how people can get access to that? And I get, right, it's the flow, intuition, but is there any kind of like a how-to kind of thing? We're all looking for how-tos, the formula, the secret formula.
Yeah. Well, I think the easiest way is to, if you really think about it, like we have all these intuitive signals show up as felt sense, right? So, something feels expansive or exciting because it's in our highest good. This is like our basic biological wiring. If you look at animals, if you look at nature, how do animals always know to stay in flow, right? This is kind of where the idea came from, is Zen masters studying, the natural environment up in monasteries in Asia, Wu Wei. This is the essence of flow, right? So if we look at animals, how do they know how to navigate the world? Well, on an instinctual, intuitional level, they have these simple felt sense signals of like, this feels good, this doesn't feel good. So if you do the things that don't feel good, you get hurt and you can die. And if you do the things that feel good, you find food and you thrive and you make connection and everything goes well. So we have these same signals, but we just learn to ignore them. So so joy and bliss, right? There's a saying from Joseph Campbell, right? The teacher on following your purpose and find it. He says, follow your bliss, right? Follow your joy, follow your inspiration, like you said, follow your excitement. Like these are all signals that are pulling us towards our purpose. And so if you just keep following those things, eventually you will find your purpose and you will continue to grow in that direction. So like, I know very clearly what my purpose is now, but even like 3 or 4 years ago, it was still a little murky. But my whole journey to figuring it out has literally been, since I was a little kid, just continuing to do whatever felt exciting to me. And eventually I found it. And so it doesn't have to take, 26 years or whatever it took me. The whole time I was doing it, I felt like I was in tune with my purpose. And that's another point about it, is that purpose shifts and changes as you shift and change. So it's not a static thing where you just find your purpose and that's it. Like you find your purpose or your passion for the time being, and then you do that. And then in doing that, you get more clarity on different layers of it. So like continuing to follow your excitement and your inspiration and your joy and your bliss, all these things are constantly pulling you in real time to figure out what your purpose is and then grow with it as it changes and evolves.
Can I share one thing real quick? Because I would love your guys' opinion on this, because I feel like I've lived my life like that. And the outside world could see me sometimes as kind of all over the place. Because like I love life and I'm traveling here, I'm traveling there, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And so I've had to try on a lot of, because that's what I like to do. I like to try it on to see if it feels good. And then if it's not, I'm like, no. So like I could get like sometimes, and that's some of the feedback, from people is that, well, you got to stay focused and and you got to like really produce results and like get that one thing done, and so man, I can't tell you, and I feel like I've had to defend myself a lot in the past. I don't really have to do it so much anymore, but they're like, gosh, you're scattered. You need to stick to one thing. And I'm like, yeah, but this is all exciting and I'm learning so much. And now I really feel like through the Conscious Wealth Builders, I'm now channeling all this knowledge that I've gathered and really putting it into helping others. But can you speak to that? Because I know sometimes if you're constantly, yeah, she's like dying to speak to that. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. And for me, absolutely. People, I think for years just didn't even know what I did or do because they see me just traveling the world, having these incredible experiences. One day I'm, sailing the Caribbean. The next day I'm tracking gorillas in Uganda and literally I've been nomadic for mostly 3 years and just traveling the world and following what I'm called to do and every day deciding who I want to be with and what I want to be doing and completely scattered. And I think one of the biggest shifts in mindset for me was the recognition that I never have to do anything, that my purpose doesn't necessarily involve doing, it involves being. And so our culture tends to define our worth and ourselves based on our achievement and the things that we're doing in the world. And I have a problem with a lot of, I don't know, everyone needs to have a world-changing purpose. And, it's not okay to be just a mom or something. Or there's a judgment, like if you don't have some life-changing, world-changing mission, you're not on purpose. And for me, that's all secondary to being a good person and being in my joy. And so everything else that I do and achieve in the world is a result of living from this place. And it's not about what I'm doing, it's how I'm being. And so purpose to me is more about who you're being. And then everything else just falls into place around that. And so, being a mom or a dad is one of the most beautiful things you can do. And then for them to be feeling like I'm not doing enough because I don't have I'm not rescuing refugees at the same time. It's just, it's so distorted to me. And it's really, I think if everyone just came back to the level of being and really just focused on that, how can I be in my joy? How can I come from this place of love and truth, that everything else falls into place. Success comes naturally and your purpose becomes more clear when you're focused on that.
That's really beautiful. It was very peaceful. I feel very peaceful by that. Yeah, I just like all of a sudden just went into this very peaceful place.
There's so much freedom in that. When you drop the doing and defining your worth and who you are and your value as a human being based on achievement. And when you just shift that, everything changes.
Oh my gosh, girlfriend, I'm like so with you. And I'm reading a book on masculine, feminine energy. And the masculine energy is very doing, accomplishing. And it's really about having those equally yoked, But I find that, I really trained myself to very like, I got to accomplish, I got to do whatever it takes to never be broke. And that points to a belief system that I created when I was a child. And so now I'm really starting, that was a tough one. Even when my intuition is saying that's not serving you, I'm still honoring the survival. I got to do whatever it takes to never be broke. And it took me up until this year, and I would consider myself a pretty conscious, evolved human being. I've done a lot of personal development work, but letting go, like what you're pointing to, to really follow your intuition, it takes courage, and it took a lot of courage for me to say, okay, I'm going to let that go and trust that the universe is going to provide for me financially, because it was like letting go of like, oh, but I don't want to let go of, okay, no, I got to focus on money because I know how to make money, but it's not, there's some of that doesn't light me up, and I had to let go of those things to really follow my bliss. And it was a very scary feeling for me, but I really just, as soon as I started honoring that this year, synchronicities showed up, this summit and all the amazing people that came into my vortex as a result of that, Raj Sisodia, Michael E. Gerber, you guys, right?
Beautiful.
Right. Yeah, totally. I feel you. I was the director of marketing for a $60 million green tech company for years, and it was a dream job. And I surfed all the time and made my own hours and got paid super well and was an entrepreneur within the company. And I left that to follow my bliss when the bliss wasn't paying the bills yet. And I left a six-figure job and, all the security I thought I had to go live my passions. And ironically, when I left, I had the same experience as you, the bridge appeared, the wings appeared, and I made more money in the 2 months afterwards, hanging out on the beach, just doing what I wanted to do than I ever had at the job before that. So, but it was like it was like the Indiana Jones moment where he's walking across the chasm to get the Holy Grail, and it's like, the bridge isn't there, but you have to get across somehow. And so,
it is so
right.
not easy. And here's another conversation, a self-limiting belief system I think a lot of people deal with is, and this is what it is. I need to make a bunch of money first, and then I'll get to what I really feel is my calling in life. That was my conversation. And it was interesting. I had a lot of people that were agreeing with that view in my reality, in my world. And so that just kept, because that's kind of what tends to happen, law of attraction, you kind of attract the same people with your belief systems. And then that just kind of instills and re-edifies your belief system. So you're like, oh yeah, so I do need to make a bunch of money and then I can follow my dreams. And that is so bankrupt. It really is, because it's just what you're pointing to. I mean, you're making more money now that you're following your bliss. And there's also that balance too of really the preparedness too. And I think that sometimes, you got to take that in consideration as well as, and maybe not. So I would like to actually hear your take on that, because that was a big thing for me, is like, okay, am I prepared? Do I have all the tools that I need to really go make this,
Yeah. Well, I mean, just speaking from my experience, like, I knew when it was time. Like, I basically set some conditions. I was like, well, I could already tell intuitionally that like this was coming quick, that it was time to leap. And I'd known that for a while, that I would eventually, like, kind of like you were saying, like, well, I would eventually just, move more deeply into my purpose, but it didn't feel totally like the right moment until it did. And then I got really strong and clear signals, and I had certain boundaries that I wouldn't cross, that I knew that like this was a sign that it was time. And so when that happened, it was like, okay, well, this is it, So I think I have seen people, like, it's kind of a paradox, because in one sense you can never be out of flow, that you're always in the perfect moment at the right time, but at another level it's also possible to mistime something too, because and in both situations are in flow, because if you do mistime something, it's something that is showing you, it's teaching you something about yourself, about your belief structures. It's putting you on a different timeline. It's a rich experience. But if you do, time it right, if you do listen to your intuition, then it's like you're going to jump at that moment when you need to. Because like, I had experiences, for example, in the 2 months after I left this job, that if I had been at the office at that job, I couldn't have been in the right place at the right moment to have those experiences, right? So there is that intuitive sensing. But if your excitement, right, like we were talking about, is telling you to do something, then do that thing. That's the sign. You know what I mean? If it's strong, then do it. So
that's so great. And I love how you said both are in the flow. So you're not making any decision that you're taking wrong. You're making all decisions right. It's a part of the journey. It's all a part of the flow. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Yeah. We don't believe that there is a right and wrong, or that you can ever be on the wrong path. There is no such thing as failure. It's all just feedback and learning. And so every decision that you make is leading to something else. And so you're never truly on the wrong path.
That's really great. And then, for me, what I'm getting from that is just being really grateful for all experiences, that they're my teacher, instead of like beating myself up, which I tend to do. I beat myself up like, oh, I should have known better, but no, it was grateful. Thank you, universe, for showing me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of what we teach too, is having gratitude for all experiences, because even the things that everything that's happening, whether you think that's what you want or not, is for your highest good. And so the perfect example is how Justin and I came together. I got really sick a year ago and had this just random infection in my abdomen. And I ended up coming up here to spend time with him because we were introduced by a client of his, and we wanted to drop in and see where the overlap was. But being nomadic, I just kind of go from one place to the next. So I probably would have come here, we would have had lunch, and then I would have gone on, I was doing a 2-week road trip up the coast of California at that time. And I ended up in the emergency room and hospitalized for 5 days. But because I had this infection, Justin and his girlfriend came to visit me every day in the hospital. We spent a lot of time together. I ended up on their couch for a couple of weeks. And in that moment, we decided that we were going to work together, write a book together. And, here we are now, being invited all over the world to teach this work. Amazing. And creating programs and institutes, and all of this came from something negative, an experience that, it was not something that I really wanted in my reality, but trusting that there's a bigger purpose and a greater wisdom to all of it, I, was very peaceful through it. And now it turns out that I found my business partner, my best friend, housemate, twin.
Yeah. maybe related. Who knows?
Yes.
Level.
Yeah.
That's so amazing. That's really great. So even as you're speaking, what if we're all living our purpose, and what if, it's all right and it's all perfect, and just not making any of that wrong, because I think what I know I tend to do is like, really, what is my highest purpose, instead of just being and just allowing, I'm always like kind of like try to figure it out, which I feel like it takes me out of the flow a little bit. And I know a lot of people, because a lot of people share that similar experience.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, how we view ourselves is everything on a certain level. So like, how we view reality, like you play games with yourself, are you in alignment with your purpose? Are you not, but that again, like what Jackie was saying is like, well, the most important question is like, are you enjoying life? Are you, growing? Are you evolving? Like, is your life meaningful to you? Are you being of service? These are the real questions, not necessarily like, am I living my purpose? Because on a certain level, you are. All the experiences you have are important for your personal growth and evolution, and they're all ultimately leading you towards your purpose. If you learn how to navigate things in flow. So
yeah. Ultimately, in the end, I don't know that your purpose necessarily matters. I think a lot of it is coming from our ego. Like, how do I want to be known, or how do I want to be remembered? But I lost a shaman friend last year. He was killed in Egypt, leading a spiritual, exploration in Egypt, and he was shot down by an Apache helicopter. And it's like just such a crazy story. And he did all of these incredible things in the world. And at his memorial service, I was amazed how many people who had come, who had only met him once. Nobody knew about, him building a school, or, trying to build a school in Mexico, or doing any of the other things that he did, but they all shared stories of how he made them feel. And them feel like they were the only person in the world. Like, everyone felt like they were Rafa's best friend, because he was walking around with little bags of, trinkets and beaded bracelets and necklaces, and he would give so freely to everyone, and everyone's like, wow, Rafa loves me so much, he gave me this necklace. And then it's like, oh, well, Rafa gave me this necklace. And like, everyone just felt so special in his presence. Knew or cared about any of the amazing things that he was doing in the world. Again, it comes back to how he was being and how he made other people feel. And to me, that's all the purpose that you need.
Wow, that's really good. I love that. That's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's and that is something that's like putting the horse before the cart, right? Most people put the cart before the horse. They're like, oh, well, I want to be successful, and then I'll do all that, like we were saying before, and like you were saying, I'll be successful, then I'll figure out my purpose. But it's like, some of the many of the most successful people, the ultra successful people, like the people that are huge, like billionaires, the richest people in the world, are the ones that do that. That they show up from the place that Raphael was showing up, and they have presence and purpose and kindness and love, and then everything follows them.
I think another distinction too is not postponing happiness. A huge event in my life, I lost 2009. And when you're faced with mortality, really every day is a gift. And so the idea of waiting till you retire to enjoy your life just makes zero sense to me. I mean, I've traveled to over 60 countries and have had just enough experiences to last several lifetimes, and really just milk each day for what it's worth. And the idea of postponing your happiness, for anything really just doesn't make sense to me. So, when I lose weight, then I'll go on a vacation, or when I, meet my partner, then I don't know.
Yeah.
Then I'll travel, and when I retire, then I can go play golf or do whatever people do when they retire.
Like when I have it all sorted, then I can have the relationship of my dreams. Then I can live my purpose. Man, I can't tell you. Like I said, whew. And then knowing doesn't make the difference, right? Because I knew a lot of what we're talking about for so long, but I wasn't implementing it into my life. I wasn't actually really doing the inner work until really this year. I just said, you know what, forget this. Like, I am done with all these self-limiting belief systems. And it's a constant process, right? Like, do you think it's like it's an evolution of?
Yeah, I mean, like there's definitely a phase where you will go through in doing the inner work that is pretty intensive, that's what we start off our program with, because it's such an integral part of getting into flow and having like an effortless life that you love, and even getting in touch with your purpose and your passion for what that's worth. And so yeah, there's an integral phase of that. I mean, what we teach is different than a lot of what other people teach. Is that yes, it's an ongoing process, but it's like I kind of like use a glass of water analogy, right? Like when the glass is full, like if the glass is your limiting beliefs and your negative emotional patterns and your trauma, when the glass is full, like you're gonna have to keep drinking water or pouring it out to get the water out. But eventually, the glass, you pour enough water out, you clear enough limiting beliefs and emotional patterns, and the glass starts to become empty. And so when you get to that point, it doesn't need to be as an intensive process. It's more of just like an awareness of when you get triggered and being present to that. So if you're doing effective inner work, that will happen. You will get to a point where you actually can feel the tangible shift in your life and your reality internally on every level, and you actually show up differently, and you don't get triggered by the things you used to, and the fears disappear and all that stuff. So when that happens, then like, yeah, you don't need, it doesn't need to be an ongoing process. But a lot of things that get taught aren't fully effective, or they only work on one level. Like Jackie was saying before, we teach people how to work through things on mental, emotional, physical, energetic, cellular level. A lot of programs, a lot of people teach things that only work on the mental level, or just working on the emotional level. So it's not a complete clearing of these different things. So when you eventually get down to the bottom of the glass and it's empty, then it's more in just kind of, autopilot. And so if you hit a speed bump, then you get back on the wheel for a second, and then you keep going. So
awesome.
Yeah, it is possible to live without fear and scarcity, and just be in an abundance, limitless mindset. And it's such an amazing place to be, having lived most of my life on the other side.
Wow. That's so great. That's so awesome. So I know we've gone like super long, but you guys were just given so much love, and I just was so receiving it. So thank you for your time. And we've got a couple of free gifts for people. Can you just share a little bit about what they are? And then we're going to have the links posted below for people to get access to that.
Yeah, totally. So there's a guide we put together to some of the flow principles. They go a bit deeper than we could have gone here in the interview. So if people sign up for that, you can download that, and it'll be a deeper dive. So if you've been resonating with what we're talking about and you want to get a deeper taste of it, this is a really good way to do it.
Awesome. Great. Cool. Well, thank you so much for being here, guys. I so appreciate who you are, for the work that you're doing, and the contribution you're making. I really do honor you both.
Yeah, thank you.
It's
You
our
too.
pleasure. Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for creating this.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
You
Awesome.
got it. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in to another awesome interview. Hope you really enjoyed it. Definitely give us your feedback in the Facebook group and definitely check out those free gifts. You guys have an amazing day.
You too.
You too.
Thank you.